The wind howled through the Wyoming mountains like a wounded animal, and Vincent Crawford knew better than to be out in this kind of weather. But his horse had thrown a shoe 3 miles back, and he had no choice but to press forward through the blinding snowstorm that had turned the world into a swirling white nightmare. He was a rancher, 32 years old, with calloused hands and a weathered face that showed every hard winter he had endured in these unforgiving mountains. His ranch sat another 2 miles north, and all he could think about was the warmth of his fireplace and the hot coffee waiting in his kitchen. The year was 1881, and Wyoming territory was still wild enough that a man could die between one breath and the next if he did not respect the land. Vincent pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders and squinted against the snow that pelted his face like tiny needles. His horse, a sturdy mare named Delilah, trudged forward with her head low, fighting against the wind with every step. The temperature had dropped so fast that afternoon that Vincent could feel the cold seeping through his layers of clothing, finding its way to his bones. That was when he saw it, a dark shape half buried in the snow just off the trail. At first, he thought it might be a fallen log or perhaps a deer that had succumbed to the cold. But as he drew closer, his heart nearly stopped. It was a person. A woman, lying face down in a drift, her dark hair spread around her like a fan, already dusted with fresh snow. Vincent was off his horse in an instant, his boots sinking deep into the powder as he rushed to her side. He dropped to his knees and carefully turned her over, brushing the snow from her face. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with delicate features and skin that had turned an alarming shade of blue. Her clothes were thin, completely inadequate for this kind of weather, just a simple cotton dress and a worn shawl that had done nothing to protect her from the storm. He pressed his fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. For a long moment he felt nothing, and his stomach dropped. But then, there it was, faint and slow but present. She was alive, barely. Without hesitation, Vincent scooped her up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and he could feel how cold she was even through his thick gloves. He had to get her somewhere warm and fast. His ranch was still too far away, but he remembered passing an old hunting cabin about half a mile back. It was not much, but it would have to do. He carried her back to his horse and, with some difficulty, managed to mount while holding her in his arms. Delilah seemed to understand the urgency and moved faster than she had all day, following the trail back the way they had come. The cabin appeared through the swirling snow like a ghost, its dark shape barely visible against the white landscape. Vincent kicked the door open, not caring if it broke, and carried the woman inside. The cabin was small, just one room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table, and a bed in the corner. It was cold inside, but at least they were out of the wind. He laid her gently on the bed and immediately set to work building a fire. His hands shook as he struck the flint, and he was not sure if it was from the cold or from fear. The kindling caught, and soon he had a decent blaze going. The warmth began to fill the small space, but he knew it would not be enough. Vincent turned back to the woman and began removing her wet clothes. He tried to be respectful, averting his eyes when he could, but he knew that leaving her in those frozen garments would kill her. He wrapped her in every blanket he could find in the cabin, then added his own coat on top for good measure. Her lips were still blue, and when he touched her hand, it felt like ice. He rubbed her hands between his own, trying to get the blood flowing, but she remained completely still, her breathing so shallow he had to watch her chest closely to see if it moved at all. "Come on," he said, his voice rough in the quiet cabin. "Come on, do not do this." He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, taking both of her hands in his and continuing to rub them gently. The fire crackled and popped behind him, throwing dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind continued to scream, shaking the cabin's shutters. Vincent leaned forward, still holding her hands, and whispered urgently, "Stay with me." For hours, he sat there, monitoring her breathing, adding wood to the fire and trying to warm her frozen body. He found a pot in the cabin and melted snow to make water, which he warmed over the fire. When it was ready, he gently lifted her head and tried to get her to drink, but her lips remained closed and the water just trickled down her chin. As the night wore on, Vincent found himself talking to her, telling her about his ranch, his life, anything to fill the terrible silence. "I have about 200 head of cattle," he said, adjusting the blankets around her. "It is not the biggest spread in Wyoming, but it is mine. Built the house myself. Took me 3 years. My father always said I was too stubborn to know when to quit, and I guess he was right about that." He paused, studying her face. Even pale and unconscious, she was beautiful. Her features were refined, suggesting she came from somewhere far from these rough mountains. "Where did you come from?" he asked softly. "What were you doing out there in this storm?" There was no answer, of course, just the sound of her shallow breathing and the howling wind outside. Sometime past midnight, Vincent dozed off in his chair, exhausted from the day's ordeal. He woke with a start a few hours later, immediately checking on the woman. Her color looked slightly better, not as blue around the lips, and when he touched her hand, it felt less like touching ice. The storm had not let up. If anything, it sounded worse, and Vincent knew they would be stuck in this cabin for at least another day. He still had some jerky in his saddlebag and the water he had melted. It was not much, but it would keep them alive. As dawn broke, gray light filtering through the cracks in the shutters, Vincent built up the fire again and checked on his patient. Her breathing was deeper now, more regular, and some color had returned to her cheeks. He felt a surge of hope. He was preparing more warm water when he heard it, a soft moan from the bed. He spun around to see her eyes fluttering open. They were a striking green, he noticed, like the new grass in spring. "Easy," he said, moving to her side. "Take it slow. You have been through quite an ordeal." Her eyes focused on him with difficulty, confusion clear in her gaze. She tried to speak, but only a dry croak came out. "Here," Vincent said, sliding his arm under her shoulders to help her sit up slightly. He brought the cup of warm water to her lips. Small sips. She drank gratefully, her hands coming up to clutch the cup, though they shook so badly he had to help her hold it steady. "Where?" She managed to rasp out, looking around the cabin with growing panic in her eyes. "You are safe," Vincent assured her. "I found you in the snow. This is just an old hunting cabin. My ranch is a couple miles from here, but we cannot make it in this storm." She closed her eyes, and he saw tears slip down her cheeks. Her whole body began to shake, and not from the cold. These were sobs, deep and wrenching, like they came from somewhere profound inside her. Vincent did not know what to do. He was not used to crying women. But something in those sobs broke his heart, and he found himself sitting on the edge of the bed, taking her hand in his. "You are safe now," he repeated. "Whatever happened, you are safe." It took several minutes for her crying to subside. When she finally looked at him again, her eyes were red and swollen but clearer. "I am Olivia," she said quietly. "Olivia Carpenter. Vincent Crawford," he replied, still holding her hand. "Can you tell me what happened, how you ended up out there?" Olivia's face hardened and she pulled her hand away from his, wrapping her arms around herself. "I was running," she said simply, "from my husband." Vincent felt his jaw tighten. He had suspected something like that, but hearing it confirmed made his blood boil. "Did he hurt you?" "Not the way you are thinking," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Robert never hit me. He did not have to. He controlled everything else. What I wore, where I went, who I spoke to. We lived in Cheyenne in a big house that felt like a prison. She paused, pulling the blankets tighter around herself. Vincent noticed she was wearing one of the old shirts he had found in the cabin. He must have put it on her at some point, though he had no memory of doing so. 2 days ago, he told me he had arranged to send me to an asylum, Olivia continued, her voice shaking. He said I was hysterical, unstable. The truth was, I had started talking back, questioning his decisions. He could not have that, so I ran. I took a horse from our stable in the middle of the night and just rode. I did not have a plan, I just knew I had to get away. The horse, Vincent asked, threw me yesterday morning when the storm hit. I tried to catch her, but she bolted. I walked until I could not walk anymore. She looked at him, her green eyes full of a mixture of gratitude and fear. You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same, Vincent said, uncomfortable with the weight of her gratitude. No, Olivia said firmly. Not anyone. Many men would have left a runaway wife to freeze. They would have said I got what I deserved for leaving my husband. Vincent stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the still raging storm. I am not most men, and I do not believe in treating women like property, no matter what the law says. They fell into silence, the only sound the crackling fire and the wind outside. Vincent could feel Olivia watching him, and it made him strangely self-conscious. He was not a handsome man, he knew that. His face was too angular, his hands too rough, his manners too unpolished for someone like her. She was clearly educated, refined, from a world of fine china and fancy dresses. What must she think of him, this rough rancher in his worn clothing and calloused hands? You should rest more, he said, not turning around. You are still weak. Vincent. Her voice was soft. He turned to face her. Thank you, she said, and the sincerity in her voice made his chest tighten. He just nodded, not trusting his voice. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days trapped in that small cabin with nothing to do but talk and wait for the weather to clear. Vincent had never been much of a talker, but somehow, with Olivia, the words came easier. She told him about her life in Boston, where she had grown up as the daughter of a factory owner. She had been educated at a private school, learned to play piano and speak French. But when her father lost his fortune in a bad investment, she had been married off to Robert Carpenter, a wealthy businessman from Cheyenne who wanted a refined wife to show off at his business dinners. I was 21 when we married, Olivia said, staring into the fire. They were both sitting near the hearth, trying to stay warm as the temperature outside continued to drop. I thought I was lucky. Robert was handsome, wealthy, charming. My mother said I was the luckiest girl in Boston. When did it change? Vincent asked, whittling a piece of wood he had found. It was something to do with his hands while they talked. Slowly at first, Olivia said. Little comments about my dress, my friends, how I spent my time. Then he started making decisions for me, what parties we would attend, which friends I could see. By the end of the first year, I barely recognized my own life. I was like a doll he dressed up and displayed when he needed me. Vincent felt anger rising in him again. He had known men like that, men who thought their wives were possessions to be controlled and dominated. It made him sick. What about you? Olivia asked, changing the subject. How did you end up with a ranch in Wyoming? Vincent smiled slightly. Not as interesting as your story. I grew up in Missouri on a small farm. When I was 20, I decided I wanted more land, more space. So I came west, worked as a ranch hand for 10 years, saved every penny. Finally bought my own place 5 years ago. You have family? My parents are still in Missouri. I have 2 sisters, both married with children. I go back to visit every few years. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Never found a woman who wanted to share this life with me. Ranching is hard work, and most women want something easier, more comfortable. Some women, Olivia said softly, would trade all the comfort in the world for a man who treats them like an equal. Their eyes met across the fire, and Vincent felt something shift in his chest. He looked away quickly, returning to his whittling. On the morning of the fourth day, the storm finally broke. Vincent woke to silence, no howling wind, no rattling shutters. He rose quietly, trying not to wake Olivia, who was still asleep in the bed. He had spent the last 3 nights on the floor near the fire, using his saddle as a pillow. He opened the door to find a world transformed. The snow was deep, at least 3 feet, and everything was covered in pristine white. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the sun was already rising over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. "It is beautiful," Olivia's voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. The morning light caught in her green eyes, and Vincent had to remind himself to breathe. "It is," he agreed, though he was not looking at the snow anymore. "What happens now?" Olivia asked, her voice uncertain. Vincent had been thinking about that question all night. "We go to my ranch," he said. "You can stay there as long as you need. Get your strength back, figure out what you want to do next. Your reputation," Olivia started. "If people know you are harboring another man's wife." "Let them talk," Vincent said firmly. "I am not sending you back to a man who is going to lock you away. And I am not turning you out into the cold, so they can say whatever they want." Olivia smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "You are a good man, Vincent Crawford." He felt his cheeks heat up and turned away, busying himself with gathering their few belongings. "We should get moving. It will take us twice as long to get home in this snow." The journey to Vincent's ranch was slow and difficult. Delilah struggled through the deep snow, and they had to stop frequently to rest her. Vincent walked most of the way, leading the horse while Olivia rode. They did not talk much, saving their energy for the trek, but the silence was comfortable, companionable. When they finally crested the hill and Vincent's ranch came into view, Olivia gasped. It was not a grand estate like what she was used to, but it was solid and well built. A 2-story house made of logs, with a large barn, several outbuildings and corrals for the horses. Smoke was rising from the chimney, which puzzled Vincent until he remembered that his ranch hand, Tommy, would have kept the fires going. Sure enough, Tommy came running out of the barn as they approached, relief written all over his young face. He was 19, an orphan Vincent had taken on 2 years ago and taught everything about ranching. "Boss, thank God," Tommy said, grabbing Delilah's reins. "I was worried sick when the storm hit and you were not back." "Had some complications," Vincent said, helping Olivia down from the horse. "Tommy, this is Miss Olivia Carpenter. She will be staying with us for a while. Olivia, this is Tommy, my ranch hand." Tommy tipped his hat politely, though his eyes were full of curiosity. "Madam, welcome to the Crawford Ranch." "Thank you," Olivia said, and Vincent could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "Tommy, can you take care of Delilah? I need to get Miss Carpenter inside and warmed up." "Of course, boss." Vincent led Olivia into the house, opening the door to reveal a simple but comfortable interior. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace, a handmade table and chairs, and several comfortable-looking armchairs. A staircase led up to what Olivia assumed were the bedrooms. "It is not fancy," Vincent said, suddenly self-conscious about his home, "but it is warm and dry." "It is wonderful," Olivia said sincerely, looking around with genuine appreciation. "It feels like a real home." Vincent showed her upstairs to the guest bedroom, a small room with a simple bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the mountains. "You can rest here." I will bring up some hot water so you can wash up, and I will see what I can do about finding you some proper clothes." "Vincent," Olivia said, touching his arm, "I do not know how to thank you." "No need," he said gruffly, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Just rest. We can talk about everything else later." Over the next few weeks, Olivia settled into life on the ranch. Vincent had given her some of his mother's old clothes that she had left behind on her last visit, and though they were simpler than what Olivia was used to, they were warm and practical. She insisted on helping around the house, cooking and cleaning, much to Vincent's protests. "You are supposed to be resting," he said one morning, coming in from the barn to find her kneading bread dough at the kitchen table. "I have rested enough," Olivia said firmly. "I cannot just sit around doing nothing while you and Tommy work yourselves to the bone. Let me help." Vincent wanted to argue, but the truth was, having her there had changed the house. It smelled better, looked cleaner, and the meals were far superior to anything he or Tommy had ever managed to cook. More than that, he looked forward to coming inside at the end of the day, knowing she would be there. It was dangerous, he knew, letting himself get used to her presence. She was still married, and eventually she would have to decide what to do about that. But for now, he allowed himself to enjoy having her near. Olivia found herself falling into the rhythm of ranch life more easily than she ever would have expected. She woke early, made breakfast for the men, and spent her days baking, mending clothes, and tending to the vegetable garden that was buried under snow but would need work in the spring. It was hard work, harder than anything she had done in her life, but it was satisfying in a way that her life in Cheyenne had never been. More than that, she found herself watching Vincent. The way he moved with quiet confidence, the gentle way he handled the horses, the patience he showed with Tommy when teaching him something new. He was nothing like Robert, who had commanded and demanded and expected instant obedience. Vincent led by example, working harder than anyone else, never asking someone to do something he would not do himself. One evening, about a month after her arrival, they were sitting by the fire after dinner. Tommy had gone to his room in the barn, and it was just the two of them. Vincent was reading a book, and Olivia was mending one of his shirts. "Vincent," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. He looked up from his book. "I need to tell you something about my husband." Vincent set his book aside, giving her his full attention. "He will be looking for me," Olivia said, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her mending. "Robert is not the kind of man who lets go of his possessions easily, and that is what I am to him, a possession." "He will not find you here," Vincent said firmly. "You do not know him," Olivia said, fear creeping into her voice. "He has money connections. He will hire people to search for me." Vincent leaned forward in his chair. "Then we will deal with it when the time comes, but I will not let him take you back to that life. I promise you that." Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You do not even know me. Why risk everything for a stranger?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You are not a stranger anymore, Olivia. And I could not live with myself if I let you go back to a man who was going to lock you away." The truth was more complicated than that, but Vincent was not ready to admit it yet, not even to himself. The truth was that he had fallen for her, somewhere between finding her in the snow and these quiet evenings by the fire. He loved the way she laughed at Tommy's jokes, the way she hummed while she worked, the way she looked at the mountains with wonder in her eyes. He loved her strength, her intelligence, the way she had adapted to this hard life without complaint. But she was married, and he was a man who believed in doing the right thing, even when it hurt. Spring came slowly to Wyoming that year. The snow melted in fits and starts, revealing the brown grass beneath. Vincent and Tommy worked from dawn to dusk, checking on the cattle that had survived the winter, mending fences, and preparing for calving season. Olivia worked just as hard, planting a garden, helping with the newborn calves, and transforming the house into a real home. She made curtains for the windows, braided rugs for the floors, and filled vases with wildflowers when they started to bloom. They fell into a pattern, a rhythm that felt natural and right. But underneath it all was a tension that neither of them spoke about. The way their hands would brush when passing a plate at dinner. The way Vincent's eyes would linger on her when he thought she was not looking. The way Olivia's heart would race when he came in from the fields, his shirt sleeves rolled up and his hair tousled. It all came to a head on a warm evening in late April. Vincent had been working on the roof, replacing some shingles that had blown off in a spring storm. Olivia brought him some water, and as he reached down to take the cup from her hand, he lost his balance. He fell not far, maybe 8 feet, but he landed hard. Olivia screamed and rushed to his side. "Vincent, are you all right?" he groaned, trying to sit up. "I am fine, just had the wind knocked out of me." "You could have broken your neck," Olivia said, and Vincent was surprised to see tears streaming down her face. "You could have died." "Hey," he said softly, reaching up to wipe the tears from her cheeks. "I am all right. It takes more than a little fall to kill me." Olivia grabbed his hand, pressing it against her cheek. "I cannot lose you," she said, her voice breaking. "I cannot." Vincent sat up fully, ignoring the pain in his back, and looked at her, really looked at her. "Olivia." She met his eyes, and in that moment, everything that had been unspoken between them rose to the surface. "I know I should not," Olivia whispered. "I know it is wrong. I am still married, and you are a good man who deserves better than this, but I cannot help how I feel." Vincent cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "How do you feel?" "I love you," Olivia said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I love you, Vincent. I love your kindness, your strength, the way you treat everyone with respect. I love the life we have built here, even if it is temporary. I love you." Vincent had never been good with words, but he did not need them now. He pulled her close and kissed her, pouring all of his unspoken feelings into that kiss. Olivia responded immediately, her arms wrapping around his neck, kissing him back with a passion that took his breath away. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he said. "I have loved you since I carried you into that cabin and you opened your eyes. I love you, Olivia, and I do not care what anyone says about it." "What are we going to do?" Olivia asked. "I am still legally married to Robert." "Then we get you unmarried," Vincent said firmly. "Divorce might not be easy, but it is possible, and I will be with you every step of the way." Olivia kissed him again, softer this time, full of hope and promise. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered against his lips. They decided that Olivia would file for divorce on the grounds of cruelty and fear for her safety. It was risky. Divorces were scandalous and difficult to obtain, especially for women. But they had to try. The problem presented itself 2 weeks later when a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was a well-dressed man in his 40s, with cold eyes and an air of authority. Vincent was in the barn when Tommy came running in. "Boss, there is a man here asking questions. He is asking about a woman matching Olivia's description." Vincent felt his blood run cold. He had known this day would come, but he had hoped they would have more time. "Where is Olivia?" "In the house. Keep her there. Do not let her come out no matter what." Vincent walked out to meet the stranger, who was sitting on his horse, looking around the ranch with a calculating expression. "Can I help you?" Vincent asked, his voice neutral. The man looked down at him. "I am looking for a woman. Olivia Carpenter. Dark hair, green eyes, about 25 years old. Her husband, Robert Carpenter, has hired me to find her and bring her home. I do not know anyone by that name, Vincent said flatly. The man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Now, I do not think that is quite true, Mr. Crawford. I have been making inquiries in town. People say you came back from the mountains with a woman about 3 months ago. She matches the description of Mrs. Carpenter perfectly. Vincent crossed his arms. Get off my land. I am afraid I cannot do that until I see this woman for myself. Mr. Carpenter is very anxious to be reunited with his wife. I said get off my land, Vincent repeated, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. The stranger noticed the movement and raised his hand slightly. There is no need for violence, Mr. Crawford. I am just doing my job. Your job is to drag a woman back to a man who is going to lock her in an asylum. That is not a job any decent man would take. That is not my concern, the man said. I am simply here to return Mrs. Carpenter to her legal husband. She is not going anywhere, Vincent said firmly. Now leave before I make you leave. The stranger studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well, but Mr. Carpenter will not give up. He will send more men or he will come himself. You cannot protect her forever. Watch me, Vincent said. The stranger turned his horse and rode away, but Vincent knew this was far from over. Inside the house, Olivia had heard everything through the open window. When Vincent came in, she was pale and shaking. He is not going to stop, she said. Robert will keep sending people until he gets what he wants. Vincent took her hands in his. Then we need to act faster. We are going to town tomorrow to speak to a lawyer. We will start divorce proceedings immediately. Vincent, that could take months, even years. And in the meantime, Robert has every legal right to take me back. He will have to kill me first, Vincent said fiercely. I am not letting him take you. The next day they rode into the nearest town, a small settlement called Crossroads, about 15 miles from the ranch. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Hastings, listened to Olivia's story with a grave expression. I will not lie to you, Mrs. Carpenter, he said when she finished. Divorce is difficult under the best circumstances. In your case, with a wealthy husband who does not want to let you go, it will be nearly impossible. What are our options? Vincent asked. We can file for divorce on the grounds of cruelty, but we will need evidence. Witnesses who can testify to your husband's treatment of you. Documents, letters, anything that can support your case. I have nothing, Olivia said quietly. Robert was very careful. He never hurt me physically, never did anything that would leave evidence. It was all control, manipulation. How do you prove that? Mr. Hastings sighed. There is another option. Wyoming Territory has different laws than most places. Here, women have rights that they do not have in other states. They can own property, vote in local elections, serve on juries. There is a precedent for granting divorces to women who can prove they were in fear for their safety or sanity. What do we need to do? Vincent asked. Write down everything, Mr. Hastings said to Olivia. Every instance of control, every threat, everything that made you fear for your safety. We will use your testimony, and Mr. Crawford here can testify that he found you fleeing for your life in a snowstorm. If we can build a strong enough case, we might be able to convince a judge to grant the divorce. How long will it take? Olivia asked. Months, at least. Maybe longer if your husband contests it, which I assume he will. Olivia and Vincent exchanged glances. Months of waiting, of looking over their shoulders, of wondering when Robert would send more men or come himself. We do it, Vincent said firmly. Whatever it takes. Over the next few weeks, Olivia wrote down her entire marriage. Every controlling comment, every decision Robert had made for her, every threat. It was painful, reliving those years, but she forced herself to do it. Vincent was with her every evening, offering quiet support, holding her when the memories became too much. Mr. Hastings filed the divorce petition, and they waited for Robert's response. It came faster than expected. Robert Carpenter himself arrived in Crossroads, bringing with him 2 lawyers and a determination to take his wife home. Vincent was in town buying supplies when he saw them. Robert was exactly what he had expected, tall and handsome, with expensive clothes and an air of superiority that made Vincent's skin crawl. The 2 lawyers flanked him as they walked into Mr. Hastings' office. Vincent quickly finished his business and rode back to the ranch. He found Olivia in the garden, and the moment she saw his face, she knew. "He is here, is he not?" Vincent nodded. "In Crossroads. He went to see Hastings." Olivia sank down onto the bench Vincent had built for her. "It is over then. He will use his money and his lawyers to make me look like a hysterical woman who ran away from a loving husband." Vincent sat beside her and took her hand. "It is not over. We are going to fight this, Olivia. We have the truth on our side." "The truth does not always matter," Olivia said bitterly. "Money and power matter, and Robert has both." The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In that time, Robert made several attempts to see Olivia, each time being turned away by Vincent or Tommy. He tried to have the sheriff force Vincent to turn Olivia over, but the sheriff, an older man named Tom Reeves who had known Vincent for years, refused. "She is here of her own free will," Sheriff Reeves told Robert. "I am not in the business of dragging unwilling women away from safe places." Robert tried a different approach, spreading rumors in town. He told anyone who would listen that his poor, mentally unstable wife had been seduced and was being held against her will by a rancher with questionable morals. Some people believed him. Vincent noticed the stares and whispers when he went to town, saw the way some people crossed the street to avoid him, but others rallied to their side. The women of Crossroads, in particular, seemed to understand what Olivia was going through. Several of them came to the ranch to offer their support, sharing their own stories of controlling husbands and difficult marriages. "You fight for yourself," one older woman told Olivia, "and you fight for all of us. Show them that we are not property to be owned and controlled." The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed, with people from all over the county coming to witness the proceedings. Vincent sat in the front row, directly behind Olivia, offering silent support. Robert sat across the aisle with his lawyers, looking confident and composed. When his eyes met Olivia's, she saw the cold anger there, the fury that she had dared to defy him. The judge, a stern-looking man named Judge Matthews, called the court to order. Mr. Hastings presented Olivia's case, reading from the pages she had written, detailing years of control and manipulation. Olivia herself took the stand, her voice shaking but clear as she told her story. Robert's lawyers were brutal in their cross-examination. They painted her as a spoiled, ungrateful wife who had everything any woman could want, but was never satisfied. They suggested that she had been seduced by Vincent and was making up stories to justify her adultery. "Is it not true, Mrs. Carpenter," one of the lawyers said, pacing in front of her, "that you are currently living with Mr. Crawford in an unmarried state?" "I am living in his home, yes," Olivia said. "In a separate bedroom. He saved my life and has offered me protection." "Protection from what?" "A husband who loves you and wants to take care of you. Protection from a man who was going to have me committed to an asylum because I dared to have my own thoughts and opinions," Olivia said, her voice growing stronger. "You call it love. I call it imprisonment." When it was Robert's turn to testify, he played the part of the grieving husband perfectly. He spoke of his love for Olivia, his concern for her mental health, his desperation to have her back home where she belonged. "I only ever wanted what was best for her," Robert said, his voice full of false emotion. "When she started having these episodes, becoming hysterical and saying strange things, I consulted with doctors. They recommended rest and treatment. I never intended to lock her away permanently, only to get her the help she needed." "He is lying," Olivia whispered to Mr. Hastings. "He told me I would never leave that place." "I know," Mr. Hastings said quietly, "but we need proof." The hearing lasted all day. By the time the judge called for a recess to consider his decision, Olivia was exhausted and losing hope. Vincent took her outside, away from the crowds and the whispers. "It does not matter what he decides," Vincent said, taking both her hands. "If the judge rules against you, we will leave. We will go somewhere Robert cannot find us, start over with new names." "I cannot ask you to do that," Olivia said. "This ranch is your life. I will not let you give it up for me." "You are not asking," Vincent said fiercely. "I am offering. I would give up everything for you, Olivia. The ranch, my name, everything. As long as I have you, nothing else matters." Olivia threw her arms around him, holding him tight. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Vincent whispered into her hair. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The judge returned with his decision an hour later. The courtroom fell silent as he shuffled his papers and looked out over the crowd. "I have listened to the testimony presented today," Judge Matthews said. "This is not an easy case. Marriage is a sacred institution, and divorce is not something I grant lightly." Olivia felt her heart sinking. Vincent reached forward and squeezed her shoulder. "However," the judge continued, "I am also aware that marriage should be a partnership built on mutual respect and affection. What I have heard today suggests that Mrs. Carpenter was living in a state of fear and control that no person should have to endure." Hope flickered in Olivia's chest. "Furthermore, the laws of Wyoming Territory are clear on this matter. Women have rights here that they may not have elsewhere. Mrs. Carpenter has demonstrated that she was in genuine fear for her safety and her freedom. She fled into a blizzard, nearly dying in the attempt to escape. That is not the action of a hysterical woman, but of a desperate one." Robert stood up. "Your Honor, I must protest." "Sit down, Mr. Carpenter," the judge said sharply. "I am not finished." Robert sat, his face red with anger. "I am granting the divorce petition," Judge Matthews announced. "Mrs. Carpenter is hereby released from her marriage to Robert Carpenter. She is free to make her own choices about her life and her future." The courtroom erupted in noise, some people cheering, others shouting in protest. Olivia felt tears streaming down her face, but these were tears of joy and relief. She turned to hug Mr. Hastings, then Vincent, who had come forward and wrapped her in his arms. "You are free," he whispered. "You are finally free." Robert stormed out of the courtroom, his lawyers following behind him. Olivia watched him go, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She had won. Against all odds, she had won. The ride back to the ranch was filled with laughter and joy. Tommy had stayed behind to watch the place, and when they arrived and told him the news, he let out a whoop of celebration. "I knew you could do it," he said, hugging Olivia. "I knew the judge would see the truth." That night, after Tommy had gone to bed, Vincent and Olivia sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. "What happens now?" Olivia asked, leaning against Vincent's shoulder. "Now we live," Vincent said simply. "We build the life we want, together." Olivia turned to look at him. "Is that a proposal, Mr. Crawford?" Vincent smiled, a real smile that lit up his whole face. "I suppose it is. Olivia Carpenter, or I guess just Olivia now, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, and share this life with me?" "Yes," Olivia said, kissing him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married a month later in a small ceremony in Crossroads. The church was full of people from the town and surrounding ranches, people who had supported them through the difficult months. Olivia wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, and Vincent wore his best suit, which was still somewhat worn but clean and pressed. As they stood before the minister, exchanging vows, Olivia thought about how far she had come. From nearly freezing to death in a snowstorm to standing here, marrying the man she loved, surrounded by friends and well-wishers. It felt like a dream. "I promise to love you, respect you, and stand by your side through whatever life brings us," Vincent said, his voice clear and strong. "I promise to be your partner, your equal, and to build a life with you filled with love and laughter." Olivia responded. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause. Vincent kissed her thoroughly, not caring who was watching, and Olivia kissed him back with all the love in her heart. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside and food brought by nearly everyone in attendance. There was music and dancing, and Olivia danced until her feet hurt, first with Vincent, then with Tommy, then with many of the men from town who wanted to congratulate her. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Vincent pulled Olivia away from the crowd. They walked up the hill behind the house where they could see for miles in every direction. "This is our land," Vincent said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Our home, our future." "Our future," Olivia repeated, leaning back against him. "I like the sound of that." Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Olivia was no longer just helping around the ranch. She was co-owner, making decisions alongside Vincent about which cattle to sell, where to expand, how to manage the finances. She had a head for numbers that Vincent lacked, and together they made a formidable team. The first year of their marriage was filled with hard work and simple joys. They expanded the herd, built a new barn, and planted fruit trees that would provide shade and food in years to come. Tommy continued to work for them, and they hired 2 more ranch hands as the operation grew. Olivia also started teaching reading and writing to the children of nearby ranches, holding classes in the Crawford house twice a week. It reminded her of her own education and gave her a sense of purpose beyond the ranch work. In the spring of 1883, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. It took Vincent a moment to understand, and when he did, his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "A baby. We are having a baby." "We are," Olivia confirmed, laughing at his excitement. Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her gently. "I am going to be a father," he said, his voice full of wonder. "You are going to be a wonderful father," Olivia said. Their son was born in November, during the first snowstorm of the season. Olivia labored for 12 hours with the help of the midwife from town and 2 neighbor women who had become her close friends. Vincent paced outside the bedroom, driving Tommy crazy with his worry. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he rushed into the room. Olivia was exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. "Meet your son," she said, her voice hoarse from labor. Vincent took the baby carefully, as if he might break. The infant had dark hair like his mother and was already making his opinions known with loud cries. "He has a good set of lungs," Vincent said, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Olivia asked. They had discussed names for months but had not been able to agree. Now, looking at their son, Vincent knew. "Henry," he said, "after my father, Henry Crawford." "Henry," Olivia repeated, smiling. "It is perfect." As the years passed, the Crawford Ranch continued to grow and prosper. Henry was joined by two more children, a daughter named Sarah born in 1885, and another son named Michael in 1887. The house that had once seemed so large to just Vincent now rang with the sounds of children's laughter and running feet. Olivia transformed from the frightened woman Vincent had found in the snow into a confident ranch owner, mother, and pillar of the community. She was known throughout the county as someone who would help anyone in need, particularly women in difficult situations. More than once, she took in women fleeing bad marriages or dangerous circumstances, helping them find their footing just as Vincent had helped her. Vincent watched his wife with admiration and love that only grew deeper with each passing year. She was his partner in every sense of the word, working alongside him in the fields when needed, managing the books, raising their children, and still finding time to teach reading to the local children. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent surprised Olivia with a trip to Cheyenne. It was the first time she had been back to the city since fleeing all those years ago. She was nervous at first, worried about running into Robert, but Vincent held her hand and reminded her that she had nothing to fear anymore. They stayed in a nice hotel, saw a play at the theater, and had dinner at an expensive restaurant. It was a glimpse back into the world Olivia had left behind, but she found she did not miss it. The fancy dresses and elaborate meals felt foreign now, uncomfortable. "I want to go home," she told Vincent on their last night there. "Are you sure? We have one more day. We could do some shopping, see more of the city." "I am sure," Olivia said, taking his hand. "Home is where I want to be, with you and the children on our ranch. That is my life now, and I would not trade it for anything." They returned to the ranch the next day, to the sound of their children's excited shouts and Tommy's welcome. Henry, now 9 years old, had helped Tommy with the chores and was bursting with pride to tell his father everything they had accomplished. Sarah, at 6, had drawn pictures for her mother, and baby Michael toddled over on unsteady legs, demanding to be picked up. That night, after the children were asleep, Vincent and Olivia sat on the porch as they had done countless times before. The stars were brilliant overhead and the air was cool and clean. "You ever think about that day?" Vincent asked quietly. "When I found you in the snow?" "I think about it all the time," Olivia admitted. "I think about how close I came to dying and how you saved me, not just my life but everything. You gave me a future I never could have imagined." "You saved me too," Vincent said. "I did not even realize how lonely I was until you came into my life. This ranch, it was just work before you. Now it is a home." Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you remember what you said to me? In that cabin, I said a lot of things. You said stay with me," Olivia whispered. "And I have. I will stay with you for the rest of my life, Vincent Crawford." Vincent kissed the top of her head. "And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that you did." The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growing children. Henry grew into a strong, responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Sarah proved to have her mother's intelligence and her father's stubbornness, a combination that led to many spirited discussions around the dinner table. Michael was the peacemaker, always trying to make everyone happy. When Henry turned 18, Vincent gave him a portion of the ranch to manage on his own, teaching him the business side of ranching and trusting him with important decisions. Sarah, at 15, had announced her intention to become a teacher, and Olivia was already making plans to send her to the normal school in Laramie. In 1901, on a warm summer evening, the whole family gathered for a special celebration. Henry had asked a local girl named Emma to marry him, and she had said yes. The wedding would be held at the ranch in the fall. As Olivia helped Emma plan the wedding, she thought about her own first marriage, how different it had been from what Emma and Henry would have. Her son would be marrying for love, entering into a true partnership with a woman he respected and admired. She was grateful that her children would never know the kind of control and fear she had experienced. The wedding was beautiful, held in the same spot where Vincent and Olivia had stood on the hill all those years ago. As she watched her son exchange vows with his bride, Olivia felt Vincent take her hand. "Our boy is all grown up," he whispered. "He is," Olivia agreed, wiping away a tear. "We did well, did we not?" "We did better than well," Vincent said. "Look at what we built. This family, this ranch, this life. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." 2 years later, Olivia became a grandmother when Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Olivia after her grandmother. Holding her tiny namesake in her arms, Olivia thought about the circle of life, how the frightened woman who had nearly died in a snowstorm had now become the matriarch of a growing family. Sarah went off to school as planned, excelling in her studies and returning home each summer filled with ideas and energy. She eventually became the teacher for the local school, taking over the position from the elderly woman who had held it for years. Michael, true to his nature, became interested in medicine. He apprenticed with the doctor in Crossroads, learning everything he could, and eventually went to medical school in Denver. When he returned, he opened a practice serving the ranching families of the area, often treating patients in exchange for goods or livestock when they could not pay with money. Vincent and Olivia grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces weathering with the years. But their love never dimmed. Every morning, Vincent still kissed Olivia before heading out to work. Every evening, they still sat on the porch together, watching the sunset and talking about their day. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was full of noise and laughter, with grandchildren running through the rooms and the smell of cooking filling the air. After dinner, Henry stood up to give a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass. "You have shown us what love looks like. Not the easy, romantic kind you read about in books, but the real kind. The kind that survives storms and hardships. The kind that builds something lasting. Thank you for the example you have set, and for the home you have given us." Everyone raised their glasses, and Olivia felt tears running down her cheeks. Vincent pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, surrounded by the family they had created together. As the years passed into the new century, the Crawford Ranch continued to thrive. Henry managed most of the day-to-day operations now, but Vincent still spent his days working alongside his son, teaching his grandsons the skills they would need to continue the family legacy. Olivia, now in her 60s, had slowed down a bit but was still active in the community. She had helped establish a library in Crossroads and served on the school board. She continued to take in women who needed help, offering them the same kind of refuge Vincent had once offered her. One winter evening, nearly 40 years after that fateful day when Vincent found her in the snow, they sat together in the same chairs they had sat in for decades. The house was quiet, the children and grandchildren gone to their own homes. "You have any regrets?" Vincent asked, his voice showing his age now, rougher and slower than it once was. Olivia thought about it seriously. "Only one," she said finally. Vincent looked at her with concern. "What is it?" "I regret that I did not leave sooner," Olivia said. "That I wasted years of my life with Robert when I could have been with you." "You found your way to me when you were meant to," Vincent said. "And we have had a good life, have we not?" "The best life," Olivia agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible." "I love you," Vincent said, the same words he had spoken countless times over the decades, but they never lost their meaning. "I love you too," Olivia replied, "always and forever." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall outside the window, each lost in their own memories. Vincent thought about the day he had found her, how small and frozen she had looked in the snow. He remembered the fear he had felt, thinking she might die, and the overwhelming relief when she opened her eyes. Olivia thought about waking up in that cabin, seeing Vincent's worried face and feeling safe for the first time in years. She thought about the life they had built together, the challenges they had overcome, the family they had created. "Stay with me," Vincent said softly, echoing the words he had spoken so long ago. "Always," Olivia promised, taking his hand. "I will always stay with you," and she did. Through the remaining years of their lives, through the continued growth of their family, through the changes that came with the new century, they stayed together. The Crawford Ranch became legendary in Wyoming, known not just for its successful cattle operation, but for the love story of its founders. When Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Olivia mourned deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, and in the memories of the 50 years they had spent together. She lived another 3 years, surrounded by family, before joining him. They were buried side by side on the hill where they had been married, where they had watched countless sunsets together. Their graves became a place where family members would come to remember and to draw strength from the example of love and partnership they had set. Henry, now running the ranch with his own grown sons, would often bring his grandchildren to that hill and tell them the story of how their great-grandfather had found their great-grandmother frozen in the snow, had carried her to safety, and had whispered those fateful words, "Stay with me." He would tell them how she had stayed, and how together they had built something that would last for generations. The Crawford Ranch continued to be passed down through the family, each generation adding their own chapter to the story, but never forgetting the foundation that Vincent and Olivia had laid. Their great-great-grandchildren still worked the land, still lived in the house that Vincent had built, and still told the story of the love that had started it all. The legacy of Vincent and Olivia Crawford was not just in the successful ranch they had built or the large family they had created. It was in the example they had set of what love could be when it was based on respect, equality, and genuine partnership. It was in the women they had helped find their own freedom and strength. It was in the community they had helped build, where people looked out for each other, and where hard work and honesty were valued above wealth and status. Years after their deaths, when the house was being renovated by one of their great-grandchildren, a box was found tucked away in a closet. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written by Olivia to Vincent and Vincent to Olivia over the years of their marriage. Even when they lived in the same house, they had written to each other, expressing feelings that sometimes could not be spoken aloud. One letter, written by Olivia on their first wedding anniversary, summed up their entire relationship. It read, "My dearest Vincent, 1 year ago today, you made me your wife, but you became my husband long before that. You became my husband the moment you chose to save my life, not just from the cold, but from the life I was trapped in. You gave me freedom, love, and a partnership I never knew existed. Every day with you is a gift, and I promise to cherish each one. With all my love, Olivia." Vincent's response, tucked in the same envelope, was shorter but no less heartfelt. "My beloved Olivia, you say I saved your life, but you saved mine too. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me what it means to truly live, to love, to build something meaningful. I will spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of the gift you have given me. Forever yours, Vincent." These letters were carefully preserved and became part of the family history, passed down along with the stories and the land. They served as a reminder that true love is not something that just happens. It is something that is built, day by day, through choices and actions, through standing by each other in difficult times, through respect and partnership. The Crawford family grew and flourished, spreading beyond Wyoming to other parts of the country. But they always maintained their connection to the ranch and to the story of Vincent and Olivia. Family reunions were held there every few years, where descendants would gather from across the nation to reconnect with their roots. During these gatherings, the oldest family members would tell the story once again to the youngest, ensuring that each new generation understood where they came from. They would walk up to the hill where Vincent and Olivia were buried, where two simple headstones stood side by side, and they would remember. The headstone for Vincent read, Vincent Crawford, 1849–1931. Beloved husband, father, and grandfather. He lived with integrity and loved with his whole heart. The headstone for Olivia read, Olivia Crawford, 1856–1934. Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. She turned tragedy into triumph and showed others the way to freedom. Between the two headstones was a smaller marker, placed there by their children, that simply read, Stay with me, always. And so the story of Vincent and Olivia Crawford became more than just a family legend. It became a testament to the power of love, the importance of respect and equality in partnership, and the strength that comes from standing by the people you love through whatever life brings. Their story began with a rescue in a snowstorm and ended with a legacy that would last for generations. Proof that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories start with the simplest acts of kindness and the most heartfelt words. The ranch they built together still stands, a living monument to their love and their life together. And as long as there are Crawfords to tend it, their story will continue to be told, inspiring each new generation to love boldly, live honestly, and always stay together through whatever storms may come.